She had never flown before, and yet on her very first flight high above the world at 36,000 feet, she found herself pressing life back into the chest of a dying man. The plane shuddered violently. Overhead, bins burst open. Oxygen masks dropped like silver fruit from a storm-torn sky. Someone screamed. Someone else prayed. But inside her, there was only silence. He lay sprawled across 3 first-class seats, his chest barely lifting, his eyelids heavy with some ancient weariness. She leaned in, placed both hands on his chest, and began to count. 1, 2, 3. Then he opened his eyes, truly opened them, and looked at her. Blue crept across his lips, but still he managed to speak. "Don't let me die. Rebecca, Daniel, you need to know the truth." Rebecca was her mother, Daniel the man who had raised her, but this man a stranger, dark-skinned, cloaked in power and a haunting stillness, he had called her daughter. Her heart plummeted faster than the plane. Who was he? And far more terrifying, who was she? 24 hours earlier, she had been just another girl in a small Oregon town, unfinished homework, cold coffee, and a worn backpack weighed down with questions no one had ever answered. Then the letter came, a thick envelope. Foreign stamp, Blackwell Henderson and Associates, London. Inside, a prepaid plane ticket and 7 quiet words that lit a long dormant fuse inside her. Your presence is required for an inheritance matter. No sender, no warmth, just legal ink and long shadows. Her grandmother had warned her. People don't hand out money for free, Emma, not to girls like us. But the letter had mentioned a name. One name. Rebecca Sullivan. Her mother. Gone 10 years now. No note, no goodbye, just vanished. And now, somehow, it was her mother's name that had summoned her across the world. Alone. She had held the envelope like it might burn straight through her fingers. If this was a scam, it was the most intimate one imaginable. She stared at the boarding pass as if it held a secret she wasn't meant to solve. Flight 772, non-stop. Portland to London Heathrow. Departure 9:10 a.m. Seat 14A. She had never been on a plane before, never left the country, never even left the West Coast. Her grandmother had paced the living room like a caged wind arms, crossed eyes full of storms. If your mama wanted you to find something, Emma, she'd have left more than a damn envelope. "I need to know," she said softly. Even if it's nothing, her grandmother had gone silent, and that silence had said everything. The morning she left Daniel, her dad, the man who taught her how to ride a bike and flip pancakes without breaking them, stood by the curb with his hands buried deep in his jacket pockets. "You don't owe anyone anything, Emma, not even your past." She had hugged him tight, trying to keep something from unraveling inside her. But some parts of you don't stay buried just because you pretend they're gone. Some truths dig their way up no matter how deep. The plane cabin felt like a different planet. Cool blue lighting, people in blazers and heels. Foreign accents that drifted through the air like invisible perfume. Everything tidy, quiet, cold. She slipped into her seat, 14A. Economy. 3 rows behind the curtain that separated them from everyone else, and then, just before takeoff, she saw him. Seat 1A. Tall, dark-skinned. A crisp gray suit that whispered wealth. Alone. Still. He wasn't watching movies, wasn't scrolling. Just staring out the window as though he saw something none of them could. His face was calm, too calm, but his hands were clenched tight in his lap. And then he turned, just for a breath. Their eyes met. Her stomach dipped. His expression flickered shock, confusion, and then something deeper, something haunting, familiar, and then it vanished. He looked away, blank. A flight attendant leaned over him. "Can I get you anything, sir?" "Just privacy," he replied. But Emma couldn't stop staring, because something about him didn't sit right. She should have looked away. She didn't. She watched him as a first class faded into soft murmurs and rustling newspapers. He had a presence quiet but heavy. The kind of man people stood up for when he walked into a room. A gold watch gleamed at his wrist. Not flashy ancestral, worn like a name. He didn't feel rich. He felt powerful. But, more than that, it was the way he had looked at her, as if she'd punctured time, as if he knew her, from where she'd never seen him before. Had she, a second attendant, approached? There was a quiet discussion, something about seating, about privacy. He answered calmly but sharply. I requested privacy. I don't share space. She rolled her eyes. The rich, always allergic to the rest of us. But just before he returned to his seat, he glanced at her again, and this time, he looked afraid. She told herself it was nothing. Nerves, jet lag, imagination. But no, the fear on his face hadn't been imagined. It had been real. Recognition. Not the kind that flutters, the kind that anchors. Like his bones had remembered something before his mind could. And in that split second before he disappeared behind his mask of elegance and silence, she saw the truth. Not a businessman, not a mystery. A man terrified of what he saw in her. But why? Why would a stranger, a man like that, look at her like a ghost he'd spent years trying to outrun? She turned to the window, hoping the clouds might erase everything, but the reflection looking back, braided hair, pale skin, eyes, too old for 17, only echoed the ache. Deep down, some part of her already knew this wasn't about money, it was about truth. An hour passed. Then he stood, deliberate, unhurried. Even gravity stepped aside for him. He disappeared behind the first-class curtain, and that's when it happened. Something small slipped from his jacket pocket. It drifted paper-light and landed at the edge of economy. No one noticed. No one but her. She hesitated, then rose. At first glance it looked like a receipt, but the texture was soft with age, folded, faded. She opened it with trembling fingers. A photograph. A young couple in their 20s standing in front of a small white house laughing. The woman, brown hair dimple on the right. The man, taller, darker skin, a Howard University sweatshirt arm wrapped around her like she was the only thing keeping him upright. Her breath caught in her throat. Her mother. It was Rebecca. There was no doubt. The smile, the eyes, the memory of a face she hadn't seen in a decade but could still draw from memory. But the man beside her wasn't Daniel. And yet, he held her as if they belonged to one another, as if they were family. She folded the photo quickly, hands trembling. Why would the man in 1A have a picture of her mother? And who was the man in the photo? Her heart beat like thunder. He was returning. She slid the photograph into her journal, into the place where half-sketched poems and unfinished truths went to hide. But nothing about this felt like poetry. It felt like trespassing, a breach in the story she'd been told her entire life. She dared a glance toward first class. He was back in his seat, still, composed. But this time his eyes were scanning the cabin, searching, and when they passed over her they hesitated, just for a moment, then turned away, as if he'd seen her, or worse, as if he'd been trying not to. The first jolt felt like the sky had torn at the seams. A sharp drop. Gasps, clinking glasses. Her hands gripped the armrests. Then came the second. Longer, rougher, the kind of turbulence that stripped memory. The fastened seatbelt sign blinked red. Passengers murmured. A baby cried. And then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw him. Seat 1A. He jerked forward like a puppet with its strings severed. Slumped, motionless. His arm dangled into the aisle. A flight attendant rushed toward him, then froze. He wasn't moving. Her body moved before her mind could catch up, unbuckling, stepping over limbs and trays. People shouted, "Miss, sit down. It's dangerous. Stay in your seat." But she was already at his side. His eyes were rolled back. Skin gone ashen, lips barely moving, and in a voice thinner than breath, he whispered, "Don't let me die." His body was cold. Not frozen, but empty. Like something had already left. Emma dropped to her knees beside him, pressed both hands to his chest and pushed. 1, 2, 3, 4. "Is there a doctor on board?" The flight attendant shouted. No one answered. She kept going. The plane pitched again. Her elbow slipped. Her knees burned. She didn't care. She looked down at his face, begging for any sign. Anything. His lips parted, barely audible, like a secret carried on smoke. Rebecca. Emma froze. He said it again, slower this time. Rebecca. Daniel. You're mine. What? Her arms trembled. I tried to protect you. You were never supposed to know this way. And then? His eyes rolled back. His chest stopped moving. The world went quiet. Emma couldn't breathe. Not because of the altitude, because she'd just been called daughter by a dying stranger. Miss, step back. 2 crew members pulled her away. Her hands were shaking. His words still rang in her skull. You're mine. No one else heard them. No one else could. A man with a medical badge rushed in, knelt beside him. Defibrillator pads. Chest compressions. Emma stumbled into her seat, heart hammering against bone. Everything blurred. Voices without faces. Movements without meaning. She stared down at her palms. They smelled like cologne and fear. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're making an emergency landing in Gander, Newfoundland. Please remain calm and seated." But calm had left the cabin long ago. People whispered, stared. Some at the man now unconscious. Some at the girl who ran from the back to save him. Some at the photo now slightly exposed in her journal pocket. Emma pressed it down. Too late. The past wasn't hiding anymore. It was flying right beside her. The wheels hit the tarmac like thunder, screeching, shaking, a hard stop like the sky itself had slammed shut. The man, Malik, was wheeled off first unconscious oxygen mask fogging with each shallow breath. As the paramedics lifted him, Emma hovered behind the chaos, not sure what she was doing. Then his eyes flickered. Just for a second. One opened. Bloodshot, tired, afraid. He saw her, and somehow, through the machines, the pain, the oxygen, he raised his hand and pressed something into hers, a small, cold object. Metal. She looked down. A key. Smooth brass. No label. No note. "London," he whispered, mouth barely moving. "Blackwell Bank. Safety deposit. Number 42. The truth's in there." She opened her mouth, but he was already fading again. "Ask your grandmother. About July 17th, 2006. Then nothing. His head lolled to the side. And just like that, she held a key to a life she didn't know was hers. Emma called Grandma the second she stepped into the terminal. She answered on the second ring. "Emma, are you okay?" The airline called. Said there was an emergency. She hesitated. "He didn't die," Emma said. He gave me something." "What do you mean, a key?" "To a safety deposit box. In London." Silence. Then Emma come home. "Did you know him?" Emma asked, voice thin. "Emma, listen to me. Did you know a man named Malik Thorne?" More silence. This one cut deeper. Her breath caught. "I knew of him," her grandmother said finally. "Your mother made mistakes, but she did what she thought was right." Right. Hiding Emma's life from her was right. "Don't open that box," Grandma whispered. "Some things don't need to be dug up." But they already had been, and Emma was standing in the ruins holding the shovel. The flight from Gander to London was delayed 4 hours. Plenty of time to back out. Emma stared at the boarding gate. Just a few steps and she could forget this ever happened. Shove the key in her pocket. Go home. Hug Daniel. Let Grandma tuck the past back under the rug where it had lived for 17 years. But she couldn't unhear his voice. "You're mine. Ask your grandmother about July 17th. The truth's in there. Truth. Such a small word. Such a heavy cost." She tightened her grip on the key until it bit into her palm. This wasn't about inheritance anymore. This was about answers. About identity. About a photo in a stranger's pocket and a mother who never said goodbye. She walked toward the gate. The scanner beeped green, and just like that she left behind everything she thought she knew for the one thing she needed to know. London greeted her with gray skies and glass towers, cold air, sharp wind, the kind that whispers you don't belong here. A driver stood at arrivals holding a sign. Miss Emma Sullivan. Seeing her name in someone else's handwriting was eerie, like she'd been cast in a movie she hadn't auditioned for. The car was sleek silent, the city blurred by outside stone and steel red buses and black umbrellas. They stopped in front of the Rosewood Hotel, too grand, too polished, too— not her. The doorman smiled like she was someone important. The receptionist handed her an envelope before the room key. Thick paper, black seal. Inside one line, "Welcome to the truth." MT. She stood there, the lobby spinning slightly. Her name, a stranger's initials, and a truth she wasn't sure she wanted. But she was here now, and there was no way back through the clouds. The law firm sat at the corner of Chancery Lane, old stone-tall windows, and silence thick as mahogany. Inside it smelled like books that never forgot. The receptionist led her down a narrow hallway to a glass office where a man in a navy suit stood waiting. "Miss Sullivan," he said, rising, "I'm Edward Henderson, Mr. Thorne's legal counsel." His voice was crisp, British, like a blade wrapped in velvet. He gestured to the chair across from his. "You've come a long way," he said. "I didn't have much choice." He smiled, not unkindly. Few of us do when it comes to legacy. He slid a slim leather folder across the table. Inside her name a passport copy and a document titled Private Testament, Malik Thorne. She looked up. Why would a billionaire leave anything to me? Mr. Henderson met her eyes. "Because he's your father, Miss Sullivan." She didn't move, didn't speak. Her fingers hovered over the document like it might bite. Mr. Henderson opened the folder slow and practiced. "This," he said, "is the certified DNA test. Dated August 2006. Her eyes locked onto the page. Malik Thorne. Positive match, 98% probability. Your mother requested it herself. She mailed the sample to a private clinic. Confidential chain of custody." Her throat closed. She searched for some flaw. A smudge, a typo, a sign this was some mistake. But there it was, her full name, her mother's full name, his. "You're saying—" "He knew, yes," he replied. "But by mutual agreement, no public acknowledgement would be made, ever. Who else knew?" He paused. "Your mother, your grandmother, and Mr. Daniel Sullivan." She blinked. Daniel, the man who raised her, who kissed her forehead goodnight, who knew, and said nothing. Suddenly, blood and truth felt like two very different things. Mr. Henderson reached into a locked drawer and pulled out a smaller envelope yellowed at the edges, sealed with wax. "Your mother left this for you," he said. 17 years ago." She took it with both hands, felt the weight of paper, the weight of things unsaid. Her mother's handwriting curled across the front to Emma. "When she's ready." She broke the seal. Inside, 2 pages, front and back. The ink slightly faded, but the words— they didn't shake. "My dearest girl. If you're reading this, it means the truth has already found you. I didn't plan for this, not like this, but life rarely asks permission." Her chest tightened. "You are not a mistake. You are not a secret. You are the collision of love and fear, ours and theirs." Tears blurred the lines. Her mother wasn't just gone. She had been waiting, writing to a daughter she hoped would one day forgive her. "I met your father in autumn, not in candlelight or chaos, but in the quiet." Her words painted the air brushstrokes of a past Emma had never seen. He was already someone. I was barely becoming anyone. He had a name. I had a voice. And somehow, in the soft spaces in between, we found each other. She read slowly, like breathing through water. The world saw color, power, headlines. But all I saw was him, tired eyes, a crooked laugh, a man terrified of being allowed to care. She wrote of secrecy, Hotel rooms, Sunday mornings full of jazz records and silence. We never made promises. We made each other braver for a while, until I missed a period, and everything changed. Emma stopped reading, because that's where she began, in the space between a mistake and a miracle, born not from plans, but from the kind of love no one dares speak aloud. I wanted to raise you myself, Emma, but the world wouldn't have let me, not the way I dreamed. I was white, your father was not, and I lived in a town that clutched its prejudices like pearls. Her words trembled through the page. We weren't just inconvenient, we were dangerous. The stares, the threats, the way your grandmother stopped answering my calls. I loved him, but I was scared. And fear. It makes cowards of even the ones who know better. Then came Daniel. He had loved me for years, quietly, gently. He offered stability, a name, a home. He said, let her have a clean slate. So she agreed. We buried the truth so you could grow without being buried by it. Emma closed her eyes. She wasn't a secret. She was a decision, a sacrifice, a survival, and maybe part of her understood, even if all of her still hurt. You were 7 when it started unraveling. You drew a picture in crayon, me, you, and Daniel, but in the corner there was a shadow. Tall, smiling, brown skin, no face. You said, that's the man from Mommy's dream. She could feel her mother's shame between the lines, the kind that stains deeper than ink. I was slipping Emma. Guilt grew louder than reason. Regret became my lullaby. I started forgetting things, appointments, birthdays. One night I left the stove on and locked myself outside the house. She checked into a clinic a week later. Voluntary, silent, no goodbyes. Daniel said he'd tell you I went on a trip, and I let him, because I thought it was temporary, but it wasn't. By the time I was better, you had already learned how to live without me, and I didn't know how to earn my way back in. Emma's hands trembled. Her mother hadn't vanished. She had quietly broken. I got better. I finished my therapy, learned to say my name without guilt trailing behind it, and when I was finally ready, I wrote. She'd sent a letter to Daniel, asked to see Emma. Just once, even from afar. No reply. A second letter. Silence. I called your grandmother. She hung up. I left messages, emails. I even drove past your school one October afternoon. Emma froze, reading that line. You were walking to the bus, blue jacket, ponytail. I stayed in the car. I told myself if she turns around, I'll go. But you didn't. And that became my answer. Her mother's handwriting began to break letters, less even words stretching. I let you go, Emma. Not because I stopped loving you, but because I wasn't sure if I deserved to anymore. The page ended, but the ache didn't. Some goodbyes don't sound like doors closing, they sound like silence that never ends. The hotel phone rang just after midnight. She stared at it for a full 10 seconds before picking up. Miss Sullivan. The voice was calm. Male, British, St. James Hospital. Mr. Malik Thorne is awake. He's asked to speak with you. Her chest tightened. She took the call. Silence. Then Emma. His voice was thinner now, scratched raw, but unmistakable. She didn't speak. I'm glad you came. She still didn't answer. I saw you before the flight. I knew it was you. You look like her. But your eyes. Those are mine. Every cell in her wanted to hang up. And yet, she couldn't. I never meant for it to happen like this, he said. But I've waited 17 years to hear your voice. She swallowed. Then said the only thing she could. Why didn't you come find me? His answer. Because I thought loving you from afar would hurt you less. The next morning, she took a black cab through rain that painted the city like a memory. St. James Hospital, 6th floor, private wing. His room was quiet. Curtains half drawn. Machines breathing for him in slow, steady rhythms. He was sitting up now, paler, thinner, but unmistakably him. Malik Thorne. Billionaire, boardroom giant, and in this moment just a father with nowhere to hide. Their eyes met. He smiled. Not confident, not proud, just human. You came. She nodded. That was all she could manage. He gestured toward the seat beside his bed. She sat. They said nothing for nearly a minute, but in that silence things passed between them. Regret, wonder, years lost, love unspoken. Then he said softly, "You don't owe me forgiveness." She looked down at her hands the way she used to when she was 7 and couldn't understand grown-up mistakes. "Maybe not," she whispered, "but I deserve the truth." "She never told you about the apartment on 5th Street, did she?" His voice was low, not from weakness but from the weight of memory, the kind that hurts more when spoken aloud. "That's where we met. I was lecturing part-time at the university. She came in with paint on her hands and fury in her eyes, argued with me in front of the whole class." He smiled faintly. She wasn't afraid of anyone, least of all me. He looked out of the window, then back at Emma, but the world was. Afraid of us, her parents, my board, her town, my investors. Everyone made it clear we were a mistake that would cost too much. He paused. "I asked her to leave with me once, just disappear. New names, new country. She said no. She said you deserved more than running." He exhaled, slow fractured. "I let her walk away. Thought I was protecting both of you, but mostly, I was protecting myself." Emma let the silence linger until it hurt. Then she asked, not in anger or accusation, but with the quiet ache that had followed her since seat 14A. "Why now?" Malik looked at her for a long time, then said, quietly, "Because I'm dying." She didn't flinch. She already knew. "But it's not the illness that scares me," he added. "It's the idea that I'll leave this world. And you'll still believe I didn't want you." That landed harder than anything else. He shifted in bed, reaching for a leather folder on the tray beside him. Inside, papers, maps, trust funds, deeds. An empire. They want this when I'm gone. The board, the press, the vultures. But none of it matters. The only thing that does is whether you'll ever believe you were more than a secret. His voice cracked. "You were the only thing I ever got right and still lost." Emma looked at the folder in his hands. So much paper. So much legacy. Numbers she couldn't even count. Buildings, foundations. A seat on the board of his holding group. A seat with her name already printed on it. Except, it wasn't the name she knew. Emma Thorne. She stared at it. That name. Not Sullivan. Not what she'd signed on every homework, every journal, every birthday card for 17 years. "I didn't come here for this," she said. "I know," he replied. "But this came for you. What if I don't want to be a thorn?" He smiled, sad, but not surprised. "Then burn it, rip it, erase it. But know this, whatever name you carry, you were mine before the world had rules for people like us." He held out the page. She didn't take it. Not yet, because a name isn't just letters. Sometimes it's the weight of everything unsaid. The letter arrived the next morning. Heavy envelope. Thick cardstock, silver crest embossed with the Thorne family sigil. Invitation to the Executive Board Assembly. Thorne Global Group. Date, tomorrow, location. London, HQ, Tower 12. Dress code, formal purpose. Confirmation of successor. Emma reread the last line 3 times. Successor. She hadn't said yes, hadn't signed anything. But the machine had already started moving. "They'll want to see you," Malik had said. "Some to welcome, most to measure. I don't belong in that room." "Neither did I," he said calmly, "until I built it around me." She thought of her life used jeans, chipped nail polish, community college brochures in her drawer back home. And now, this. "If I show up," she whispered. "What does that mean?" "It means the world will finally have to say your name out loud, and not whisper it like a scandal." The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, a long obsidian table that seemed to cut through the skyline itself, 12 chairs, 11 filled. Emma stepped in black blazer borrowed from the hotel concierge, palms sweating inside sleeves 2 inches too long. They turned. Men in tailored suits, women with eyes like closed ledgers, all silent. Then one of them stood. "You're late." Not a greeting, a judgment. She said nothing, just pulled out the empty chair at the end of the table, the one left for her. She didn't sit. Malik wasn't there to shield her. His name weighed the seat, but she carried none of his armor. "State your name," one of them said. Emma looked up, straight into the eyes of a man who clearly didn't want her there. "Emma Sullivan," she said first, then paused. "Emma Thorne." The air shifted. No applause, no nods, just recognition and quiet warfare. The room stayed still, but the air tightened. Her name echoed once, then again this time like a challenge. A woman in pearls cleared her throat. Eleanor Vance, Sr. Chair, 40-year board member, eyes sharp enough to cut diamonds. "Miss Thorne," she said. "Let's be clear, this seat exists because of Malik's sentimentality, not structure." Emma said nothing. "You were raised outside the system. No education in economics, no grooming, no public record, no bloodline." Her heart thudded. Eleanor leaned forward. "In our world, bloodlines matter." The word hung there. Bloodlines. Not merit, not will, not truth, not her. Malik's assistant, seated quietly nearby, opened a folder. "Mr. Thorne amended his trust 3 months ago. Miss Emma Thorne holds 51% voting rights effective upon his incapacitation." A murmur spread. Chairs shifted. Emma looked at Eleanor. "Seems like blood found its way back," she said. Eleanor didn't blink, but she blinked slower. They expected her to sit quietly, grateful, humble, obedient. Instead, Emma looked around the room, $12 billion egos waiting to see if she'd flinch. She didn't. "If I'm to inherit this seat," she said, "then I set my terms." A cough. A smirk from the man at the far end. But she kept going. No backroom votes, no legacy hires, no silence bought with donations. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Idealism is expensive. So is pretending everything's fine until it collapses." Emma dropped a single sheet on the table. A proposal, ethics review, whistleblower protection, community reinvestment. They skimmed it. Some scoffed. "What do you know about our world?" one man asked. She leaned in. "Enough to know you're afraid I might change it." Malik wasn't in the room, but she could feel his pride in the silence that followed. For the first time, they weren't speaking. They were listening. The elevator hadn't even reached the lobby when her phone rang. Unknown number, no hesitation. "Miss Thorne, St. James Hospital, you need to come now. No explanations, just urgency." She ran, shoes echoing off marble, city lights blurring past the cab window, rain streaking like tears down glass. The nurse met her at the ICU doors. Eyes soft, voice clinical. He's conscious, but fading fast. Malik lay surrounded by machines. Tubes, quiet beeps, his skin thinner than memory. He turned his head as she stepped in. Tried to smile, didn't have the strength. Emma took his hand. Warm. Barely. "You were magnificent," he whispered. She would have been proud. She blinked back everything. "Tell me now," she said, voice shaking. "What haven't you told me?" He closed his eyes, breath shallow. "Then the boy, Rebecca's first child, before you," she froze. "You're not the only one." Emma leaned in. "What do you mean? Another child." Malik coughed. Oxygen hissed around his words. "Before you, Rebecca was 17. Too young. Too scared. Her parents sent her away." His eyes clouded, lost in some other year. "They told her the baby died. But it was a lie. The boy was adopted. Quietly. No records." Her heart thudded. "You knew," I found out years later. Traced the agency. But by then, he was gone. Moved. Name changed. His grip tightened just enough to make it real. "He's out there, Emma. Somewhere. And he doesn't know." She shook her head, the room spinning. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? His breath was thin, barely enough for sound. Because I couldn't find him, and I didn't want you chasing ghosts. He paused, eyes flickering. But you deserve the full family, even the pieces we lost. The monitor beeped slower, and the silence pressed in. After Malik closed his eyes for the last time, the hospital turned cold. Not in temperature, in finality. They asked if she wanted to start funeral arrangements. She said no, not yet, because his story wasn't done. In his leather folder under the estate files and legal clauses, she found a side pocket. Inside, one photograph. A boy, maybe 10. Curly hair, mixed race, standing in front of a foster home with a plastic dinosaur in one hand. No name. Just a post-it, last confirmed. Baltimore, 2008. And a torn page from a private investigator's report. Faded, but still legible. First name at birth. Jonah. That was all she had. No address, no recent leads, but it was more than nothing. She traced the edge of the photo with her thumb. He was out there. Not a ghost, a brother. And suddenly, every part of her knew. This story doesn't end in a will. It begins with a search. 3 days later, Emma stood outside a crumbling row house in East Baltimore. Peeling paint, rusted railings, a mailbox with no name, just a number 43B. This was the last known address in the report. 17 years ago. She knocked. Nothing. Again, louder. Finally, a woman cracked the door. Thin frame, heavy eyes, maybe 50. "You looking for somebody, Jonah," Emma said. "He lived here, years ago. Foster care." The woman squinted, studying her like a riddle. Then something shifted. "You, her kid, who's that white girl used to visit him. Said she was the sister. Only came once. Cried the whole time." Emma's breath caught. Did she leave anything? A name? A number? She shook her head. Just a drawing he gave her. She held it like it was scripture. She disappeared into the back room. Came back with a folded page. It was a crayon sketch. 2 stick figures, holding hands, labeled Me plus E. The drawing was child simple. 2 stick figures. One had spiky hair, the other had long, jagged yellow lines maybe meant to be Emma. They stood in front of something, a house, a tree, number and a sign. She squinted. 4 crooked letters in crayon blue. Stay. Not a word. A place. Emma Googled for hours back at the hotel, cross-checked with foster homes, shelters, group facilities. Finally buried in an old government archive stay house transitional youth program. Dover, Delaware. Closed in 2012. Jonah had been transferred there 3 months after leaving 43B. She called every number tied to the building. Disconnected. Gone. But one lead remained, a retired caseworker listed on the facility's old annual report. Mrs. Adela Barnes, age 76, lives in Wilmington now. Emma stared at the address. It felt fragile, final, but she knew one thing. If Jonah had drawn that word for her, he'd meant for her to follow it. Adela Barnes lived in a cottage that smelled of mint tea and old pages. She welcomed Emma with a look that was part suspicion, part memory. "You came for Jonah, didn't you?" Emma nodded. Adela poured tea without asking. Quiet boy, smart, used to build things out of matchsticks. Always looked like he was waiting for someone. Emma held out the drawing. Adela stared at it for a long time. "He gave this to a girl once," she said. "Said she was his sister. That was me," Emma whispered. She looked closer. No, she was younger, 7, 8 maybe. Emma's breath caught. "That's impossible." "I never—" Then she stopped. A flicker, a flash, a summer trip. Daniel taking her to visit a friend. A boy with a dinosaur. A shy wave. A drawing she folded in her jacket and forgot. Adela smiled gently. "You came before child. You just didn't know what you were coming back to." Adela gave her one more name. He stayed with a mechanic in Chestertown after the home closed. Older man. Took Jonah in as an apprentice. Taught him how to build with his hands instead of just hide behind them. A garage. No website, no email, just a faded yellow sign, Hank's Auto off Highway 213. Emma drove 5 hours through silence. Pulled in just before sunset. A boy, no a man, stood under the hood of a rusted red truck, back turned. Curly hair, oil on his shirt, humming something under his breath. Emma stepped out, heart in her throat. Jonah. He straightened slowly, turned, eyes like hers, but harder, older. He didn't smile, just stared. Then quietly, "It's you." She nodded. No script, no speech, just a single breath. "I've been looking for you." He wiped his hands. "Took you long enough." They sat on the tailgate of the old truck, sun going down, tools clinking in the background, the quiet kind of quiet. Emma handed him the drawing. He laughed, short, unsure. "Didn't think you'd still have it." "I didn't," she said. "It found its way back to me." He looked down. "They told me I was left, that nobody wanted me." "Same," she said. They sat in that truth. No violins, no hugs, just two people who shared blood and bruises and a father they barely knew, but somehow both forgave. Emma pulled out the folder Malik had left her. 51% of something I didn't ask for. Jonah raised an eyebrow. "What are you going to do with it?" She smiled. "Build something that doesn't forget the rest of us." He nodded. Not approval, but acceptance. And beside him she finally felt it. Not inheritance. Home.